Claire came through the door at 9:47. I know because I'd been watching the clock since 8. Not out of worry, out of habit. 6 months of habit does that to a man, turns waiting into a kind of breathing. She had her coat still buttoned, cheeks flushed from the cold, or from something else. Her eyes were bright in a way I used to love. 22 years ago, that brightness was mine. Tonight, it belonged to someone else, and she didn't know that I knew exactly whose name to put on it. "Sorry I'm late," she said, dropping her bag by the stairs. "Traffic on the bridge." There was no traffic on the bridge. I'd checked. I didn't say that. She crossed the kitchen toward me, unbuttoning her coat as she moved, and there was something in the way she walked, loose, unguarded, like a woman who thought she'd gotten away with something. She had, for 6 months. Tonight was the last night that would be true. "You didn't eat," she said, glancing at the untouched plate on the counter. "I told you not to wait for me. I wasn't hungry." She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell someone else's cologne ghosting off her collar, faint under her perfume, the kind of faint you only notice if you've spent 6 months learning to notice it. She leaned in. Her hand found my jaw the way it used to, the way it hadn't in longer than either of us wanted to admit. And for half a second, just half a second, some old reflex in my chest leaned toward her too. 22 years doesn't disappear just because you've been lied to for 6 months of it. Then I remembered why I'd been counting the months. I let her get close enough that her breath touched my mouth before mine touched hers. "I know about Marcus," I said. She went still. Not the stillness of confusion, the stillness of someone hearing a door lock from the outside. "What?" Her hand was still on my jaw. It hadn't moved yet. It would, in a second, but it hadn't yet. "I know," I said again, quieter this time. "I've known for 6 months. Daniel, and I sold you to him." Her hand dropped. "What are you talking about?" Not a question. A demand dressed as one, her voice climbing, the color draining out of that flush on her cheeks until she looked almost gray under the kitchen light. $1 million, I said. That's what he paid. Not for you, exactly. For the silence. For me signing off on the house, the accounts, walking away clean and quiet so the two of you could have whatever this is without a mess attached to it. You're lying. I'm not. Daniel, if this is some kind of— You're free, Claire. I said it the way you'd tell someone the weather. Steady. Almost kind. If kindness and finality can share a sentence. That's what the money bought you. Freedom. No divorce fight. No dragging this through lawyers for a year. No version of this where I make it hard for you. You wanted him. Now you can have him without me standing in the way. She was shaking her head. Small movements, like she could undo the last 30 seconds if she just kept refusing them. And I'm going to marry Renee. That landed different than the rest of it. I watched it land, watched the exact moment her face stopped being about Marcus and started being about something closer to home, something she hadn't braced for at all. Renee, she said the name like it belonged to a stranger. My Renee? Yes. She stopped, started again. How long? I didn't answer that. Not yet. Behind her, on the counter, her phone lit up. A name I recognized flashing across the screen. 3 words visible before the light faded again. Are you home? Claire didn't look at it. She was still looking at me, waiting for me to tell her this was a cruel joke, that none of it was real, that in a minute I'd laugh and admit I'd only found out tonight, and panicked and said something ugly I didn't mean. I didn't laugh. Sit down, I said. There's a lot you don't know yet. She didn't sit down. She stood by the counter with her arms crossed over her chest like she could hold herself together by force, and she said, "Start talking." So I did. It started with a receipt. Not even a good one. A valet ticket from a hotel 40 minutes from here, folded into the pocket of a jacket I was taking to the cleaners. 6 months ago, on a Tuesday, doing something as ordinary as emptying pockets before laundry. I remember standing in the garage with that little orange ticket in my hand for a long time, turning it over, telling myself there were 100 reasons a woman might have a valet ticket from a hotel she had no reason to be at. I couldn't think of one that survived past midnight. "You could have asked me," Claire said now, her voice tight. "That night, you could have just asked. Would you have told me the truth?" She didn't answer that. She didn't need to. "I want to explain something to you," I told her. "Not about Marcus. Not yet. But about the 6 months. Because it wasn't rage that got me through them. Rage burns too fast. It doesn't last a season. What got me through was something colder and steadier. Something that let me get up every morning and kiss you on the forehead like nothing had cracked open in my chest. I needed to understand what I was looking at before I let myself feel it. So I watched. I watched you get better at lying, actually. The excuses got smoother. The alibis more specific. I watched you start looking at your phone the way people look at something they're guarding. And somewhere in the 2nd month, I stopped watching you and started watching him. Marcus wasn't hard to find. 20 years of crossing paths at the same industry dinners, the same charity boards. A man I'd call a friend if you asked me before all this. A man with more money than judgment, and a wife of his own who, as it turned out, was tired in ways that mirrored mine. "You talked to him," Claire said. Not a question this time. A dawning. "I had coffee with him 3 months ago." I let that sit. "You remember that week I told you I was in Denver for the Hartley account?" Her face told me she remembered. Her face told me she was recalculating everything. Every trip. Every late night. Every excuse of mine she'd accepted without a second thought. Because it hadn't occurred to her that I might be the one with something to hide. "I wasn't in Denver." "Then where?" "I was finding out exactly what you were worth to him." The words came out flatter than I meant them, and I watched them hit her like something physical. She flinched. Good. Some old wounded part of me thought, before I put it away again. I hadn't come this far to enjoy her pain. I'd come this far to survive it. "That's disgusting," she said. "You're talking about me like property, like something you sold." "I'm talking about a business arrangement between 2 men who'd both stopped being honest with the women they married." My voice didn't rise. It hadn't risen once, not in 6 months of rehearsing this exact conversation in my head at 2 in the morning. "Marcus wanted you without consequence. I wanted out without a war. We found a number that let both of us have what we wanted. And you never once thought to just leave me? Like a normal person? Divorce papers, a fight, a lawyer, anything human?" I thought about it every single day. That stopped her. I thought about it in the shower. I thought about it across the table from you at dinner, watching you check your phone under the tablecloth like I wouldn't notice. I thought about the version of this where I throw the valet ticket in your face the night I found it, and we scream at each other until the neighbors call someone. I paused. I didn't do that because rage makes bad decisions, Claire, and I only had one shot at doing this in a way that didn't cost me everything I'd spent 22 years building. Her phone lit up again on the counter. She still didn't look at it. I did. "Are you home? Call me." "Something's wrong with the transfer." "What transfer?" she said, following my eyes. I didn't answer right away. I let her stand there a moment, watching her own unraveling arrive one text at a time, the same way I'd had to watch mine arrive one valet ticket, one Denver lie, one late night at a time. That, I said finally, is Marcus finding out the account he thought he'd funded quietly this morning isn't quite as quiet as he believed. What did you do? I picked up my glass, took a drink I didn't need, mostly to give my hands something to do. I haven't told you the part where I sat across from Renee 3 weeks ago, I said, and she told me how long she'd known before I did. Claire's face changed at the name a second time, faster now, like she'd braced for it, and it still hurt going in. Renee knew? Her voice had gone thin. Before you did? 4 months before I did. That's not... She would have told me. She's my best friend. She wouldn't have... She tried, Claire. Twice, from what she told me. Once at your sister's wedding, when she said something about being careful with Marcus's crowd, and you laughed it off. Once over lunch, more direct, and you told her she was imagining things and to mind her own marriage. Claire's arms had come uncrossed. She was gripping the edge of the counter now instead, knuckles pale, like the room had started tilting under her. So she gave up, I said. And then she watched you keep going anyway, and she carried that, alone. For 4 months, watching her best friend build a second life on the back of the first one, not knowing what to do with what she also knew, because the 2 people she'd have told were you. I gestured at her, and me, and she couldn't tell either of us without ending something. So instead she told you. She didn't tell me. I found the valet ticket on my own, remember? She confirmed it. There's a difference. Don't split hairs with me right now. Claire's voice cracked on the last word, the first real crack all night. She sat there, at our table, at Sunday dinners, knowing, and said nothing to me. You want to talk about people sitting at your table saying nothing? That landed the way I meant it to. She looked away first. I told her the rest, because she was owed the rest, even if she didn't want it. How 3 weeks ago, I'd asked Renee to meet me, not at our house, not anywhere either of them would recognize, a diner off the highway with bad coffee and vinyl booths cracked at the seams. How I'd asked her straight out, how long, and why didn't you say something sooner? And what am I supposed to do with a marriage built on a foundation everyone could see except me? And how somewhere in that conversation, over coffee neither of us drank, Renee had gone quiet in a different way. Not the quiet of someone protecting a secret, the quiet of someone about to tell one. I didn't just watch out of loyalty to you as her husband, she'd said. I watched because it was easier to see what she was throwing away than to admit what I'd wanted for longer than I should have. I hadn't known what to do with that sentence for a full week. She's in love with you. Claire said it out loud before I did, like saying it herself might soften what it meant. That's what you're telling me. Renee has been in love with you. For longer than either of us knew to look for it, apparently. How long, Daniel? Her voice had dropped to something almost too quiet to hear. How long have you? The front door opened. Neither of us had heard a car. Neither of us had buzzed anyone in. But the door opened with the particular unhurried confidence of someone who still had a key from years of being welcome in this house. And Renee stepped into the front hall, still in her coat, cheeks pink from the cold, holding her own phone out in front of her like evidence. Marcus is calling everyone, she said to Daniel, not yet looking at Claire. The account, the transfer, it's already unraveling. He knows something's wrong, and he's trying to figure out who to blame first. Claire turned slowly to look at her. Renee. Renee's eyes finally moved to her. 20 years of friendship sat in the half-second of silence between them, and neither woman moved to close the distance. I should have told you, Renee said, a long time ago, about Marcus, about me. About you? Claire's voice was very steady now, the dangerous kind of steady. What exactly is about you, Renee? Renee didn't answer right away. She looked at me instead. One look, just long enough for Claire to see it and understand exactly what it meant. Before she finally said the thing she'd apparently been building toward for months. I think you already know. For a moment, nobody moved. The three of them stood in a triangle in that kitchen. Claire by the counter, Renee still in her coat by the door, Daniel between them, holding a glass he no longer wanted, and the silence stretched long enough that the refrigerator hum became the loudest thing in the room. Then Claire laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound a person makes when the alternative is screaming. "This is insane," she said. "This is you two planning this for months while you were with Marcus," I said. Yes, I was going to end it. The words came out fast. Too fast. The kind of fast that comes from a person who hasn't rehearsed them because she never expected to need them. I've been trying to figure out how to end it for weeks, Daniel. I swear to you, don't. I mean it. It got out of hand. It wasn't supposed to become, I love you. I know you don't believe that right now, but I do. I never stopped. Claire. I set the glass down. It made a small, final sound against the counter. I spent 6 months learning how to survive, finding out you didn't mean that the way I needed you to. I'm not going to let you take it back from me in the last 5 minutes before I walk out that door. She flinched at walk out, like some part of her hadn't believed until that exact word, that this was really ending. So that's it, she said. You've already decided. Nothing I say changes anything. Here's the part I hadn't said out loud yet. Not to Renee at the diner, not to myself in the shower at 2 in the morning. I made myself say it now, because Claire deserved at least this much honesty on her way out the door, and because I deserved to hear whether it was true when it left my mouth. I need you to understand something, I said. This isn't punishment. I thought it was, for a while. I thought I was building something clever enough to make you feel exactly what I felt the night I found that ticket. And for a couple of months, that's honestly what kept me moving. Some ugly, satisfying picture of your face when it all came apart. Comforting, Claire said, bitter. I'm not finished. I looked at her, and for the first time all evening, I let her see that I wasn't entirely steady either. That 6 months of careful, cold planning had a cost I was only now starting to add up. Somewhere around month 4, it stopped being about you. It started being about whether I could still recognize the man who used to bring you coffee in bed on Sundays for no reason at all, and I couldn't. So this, the money, Marcus, all of it, this isn't me getting even. It's me getting out. There's a difference, even if tonight it doesn't feel like one to you. Claire was quiet. Renee, by the door, hadn't moved, but her eyes had softened, watching me say it, like she was hearing it confirmed for the first time herself, that this had never fully been about her either. And Renee, Claire said finally. Where does she fit into getting out? Sounds like you traded one secret marriage for another. That's fair, I said. Ask me again in a year, and I'll have a better answer. Tonight, all I know is that she told me the truth when it would have been easier not to, and you didn't for 6 months when it would have cost you nothing to. Claire looked between us, me, then Renee, then back, searching, I think, for some version of this where she still had a role to play. She didn't find one. So what happens now? She said. Quieter. Something in her had finally stopped fighting the shape of the night. Now you call Marcus back, I said. Now you find out exactly what $1 million and 6 months of silence bought you. And Renee and I figure out what we're allowed to become, now that we're not hiding it from anyone anymore. Claire's phone buzzed again on the counter. She looked at it, really looked this time, and something in her face closed like a door. "You planned this down to the minute, didn't you?" she said. "The kiss, the line, all of it. I practiced it more times than I'll ever admit to you." She picked up the phone, didn't answer it, just held it, staring at Marcus's name on the screen like it belonged to a stranger she'd agreed to marry, sight unseen. "I hope she's worth 6 months of pretending you still loved me," Claire said, not looking up. Renee's voice from the doorway was steadier than I expected. "He never pretended. That was the whole problem." Claire didn't answer that. She picked up her coat from where she'd dropped it an hour and a lifetime ago and walked past both of us toward the door without another word. And for a moment, watching her go, I felt the strange, hollow vertigo of a man who'd gotten exactly what he planned for and still wasn't sure. Yet, if it was what he wanted. 6 months after the night in that kitchen, I still keep a valet ticket in my wallet. Not the original. That one I burned, ceremonially, alone, on the back porch about a week after Claire moved out, watching the little orange stub curl black at the edges and thinking it should have felt like more than it did. This one is new. From a hotel Renee and I stayed at on our first trip together, 6 weeks into whatever we were still learning to call ourselves. I keep it as a kind of joke between us now, dark enough that only the two of us understand it. She laughs every time she finds it in my coat pocket. It's not really a laugh about the ticket. The town found out, of course. Towns like ours always do. There's a version of this story that made the rounds at the club, at the church potlucks, in the particular hush that falls over a table when I walk in. The version where I'm either the wounded husband who did what he had to, or the cold, calculating man who turned his wife's affair into a business transaction and married her best friend before the ink dried. Both versions are true enough that I've stopped correcting either one. Claire and Marcus didn't last. I'd wish I could say I take no satisfaction in that, but honesty was the whole point of the last 6 months, so I won't pretend now. His wife found out everything within a month, the transfer, the account, all the ways his own carefulness had failed him the same season mine had finally succeeded. Claire told a mutual friend, who told Renee, who told me without my asking, that she was renting an apartment across town and working longer hours than she used to, and that some nights she sat in her car in the parking lot before going up, not ready yet to be alone with what she'd traded. I won't pretend that doesn't sit somewhere in my chest. 22 years leaves a shape behind, even after the person is gone. Renee and I married in March, small, in her sister's backyard. Nothing like the wedding Claire and I had 30 years ago with the tent and the band and 200 people who are mostly strangers to me now. Renee wore blue instead of white, said it felt more honest, and I understood exactly what she meant without either of us needing to explain it further. There's a particular kind of marriage you build with someone who already knows your worst season firsthand. No illusions to protect, nothing left to discover that could still surprise you into leaving. Some nights I still think about the version of that evening where I never found the valet ticket, where laundry day came and went, and I stayed a man who trusted his wife completely, right up until the day something worse than a hotel receipt would have told me the truth instead. I used to think I'd give anything to have stayed that man a little longer. I don't think that anymore. What I understand now, 6 months and 1 marriage later, is that the 6 months of silence weren't really about revenge, whatever the town wants to call it. They were the only way I knew how to grieve something before I was ready to say the word out loud. Some men drink. Some men disappear into work. I built a quiet, careful exit and called it strength. And maybe it was. And maybe it was just the shape my grief happened to take. Renee asked me once, not long after the wedding, if I'd do it the same way again. The silence, the planning, the $1 million, all of it. If I had the 6 months back. I told her the truth. I don't know. I know it cost me something I can't fully name yet, alongside everything it gave me. I know Claire is a person I loved for half my life, and that loving her that long doesn't disappear just because the marriage did. And I know that the man who finally kissed his new wife in a backyard in March isn't quite the same man who let the old one lean in for a kiss that never landed. Some doors you close because you have to. You don't always get to feel good about closing them. You just get to walk through the next one and find out, slowly, whether it was the right one after all.